Good morning. Welcome to the world of conscious positive thinking with MJ, where your thoughts become your power and your mindset becomes your compass. MJ is here to guide you through a journey of self-awareness, emotional mastery, and empowered living.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Want to make
reach out and touch your musical sound, no matter you young or old, God let the good time roll. But it's still you say, right. Can't wait any longer. My love cannot linger. Hear the river whisper keenly. See no matter if you're happy, see no matter if you're blue. My love it a shine on for you. My heart it a bubble up for you. My love it a shining for you. It a shining for you. Hey you, hey you. It a shining for you. Say when love could have never grow old. Love work, Mount Diamond and Pearl. Till it is a work on the top of the world.
Oh, I don't know. I keep giving that rhythm that damn hello. Welcome to the end of 2025. What is going on? What's going to happen? What is going to be? Are we going to be que sera? What will be, will be. You guys, this is I'm ending my second year, 2025 on mbradio.us. What a blessing. What a joy. It has been. What a learning phenomenon for veterans and for people with a voice to try to help. And you know what? If we are here and you're here, that's all that matters, because it is what it is. And today, we got a big one. We got a big one for a lot of service to others. If you are a service to others, then I can completely understand your addictions. It is a tough one. Addictions is always a very tough subject to talk about, because you could look at somebody and know that they have a psychological or mental issue going on, and you're watching them, like the song Gloria, right? With the alcohol. They always saw her just drunk. And if you ever heard that song, it is about addictions. I know there's several of our DJs here at MBR who are through the 12-step program, through the Christ program, and they assist as well. And Red is one of those big guys who, on our station, Freedom from Struggle, he talks about it, talks about his own and how he got out of it. So there is a lot of stress involved. There is a lot of mental anguish involved. And we're going to find out how we're going to try to help flip some of these addictions. And addiction isn't just alcohol. Please understand that. So, and sometimes we have to figure out what addiction is. So briefly, what addiction, it's a chronic condition in which a person compulsively seeks and uses a substance or engages in a behavior despite harmful consequences driven by changes in the brain, rewarded motivation, and self-control systems. That is the definition of addiction. And that is a lot to take in, because you could have addiction to gambling, to sex, to anger, medications, abuse. All of it leads down into an abuse system. So it's a big show. You want to stick around, because maybe you know somebody who might be able to help with addictions and try to help persuade their mental mind in comfort and in lovingness instead of the agitation that it is causing. Okay, but before we go on this beautiful December the 29th, here at the end of the 2025 year, I know we have to do the what does the 64 mean? So the number 64, it's a big one. It results in a 1. 64 results in a 1. The angels urge you to put yourself first. It is so important to maintain your own personal energy levels to achieve perfect health and emotional well-being. Okay? With increased energy levels here coming into this new year, you become a more powerful individual. You will then be able to love and care for yourself and also others generously. Your angel power word going in is angel altar. MJ, what is an angel altar? Well, guess what? You're going to find out what an angel altar is, because number 64 talks about angel altars. So 64, it is the time to invite your angels into your home by creating a special place for an angel altar. Whether you follow Archangel Gabriel, Archangel Michael, Ezekiel, Archangel, Raphael, Archangel, I said Ezekiel. Well, there's a ton of them. I can't come off the top of my head, but there's the main ones. Anyway, so whatever your angel is, or whoever you think your angel above you is, you create that altar, you find a special place and you set up that altar and you dedicate it to your angel. Every time you look at it, you say, thank you, angel, thank you. And in no time, you're going to feel that angelic energy filling your home and love and your comfort and security. It could even be Jesus Christ if that's the case, since we're here at the Merriment. Oh, and happy Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa started on the 26th. So 26, 27, 28, 20. You're on your 4th candle today. May your harvests be plentiful. And getting ready for this New Year's celebration. I hope somebody has somebody to be with them and be out there and hold their hand and maybe a kiss when they see that ball drop at New Year's and say, my gosh, we made it another year around the sun. Woohoo! One more year around that sun, right? What a journey it's been, the Grateful Dead songs. Okay, we're going to dive deep, people. We're going to dive really deep. So, of course, everybody may have one in the family. Maybe you hear a lot of myths about addiction. There's a lot of myths, fables, and tales, that people assume that is addictions. So we're going to lay out what addictions are, and then we are going to fulfill it with the metaphysical side, because MJ don't like a lot of things made by man. So we're going to take a physical approach and a metaphysical approach. We're going to bind them together, and then we are going to move like lightning, because there's a lot to do before this new year, and you don't want to sit here and listen to this, but it's going to help you. It's going to help you, because you know what happens in the holidays, right? These addictions, they set into our depression, they set into our stress, they set into our anxiety. So I felt this was a perfect time, because we already had to deal with some of us at Christmas, and New Year's gets to be a little bit more with the old tipping of the glasses and the champagne and bubblies flowing. So for some of us, it's a little bit difficult, right? Or it could be really free flowing and we're just going to drink up the bubbly. So never know. We're going to dive in. But first, listen, we're going to take a small little minute. And then when we come back, we're going to dive in. So let me give Die Hard a little chance. Look, folks, up at the top of your corner, I want to blink it. This is Die Hard QR code. It's going to be in your top corner. Watch me blink it. Bam. Watch. Woo. Blink, blink, blink. There it's blinking. Die Hard and I and MBR are still pushing really hard. Please donate to them. You'll get a beautiful, awesome shirt on the front and on the back. And we are here to help and raise as many veterans as possible. So we're going to take a break and we'll be right back on MJ with the World of Conscious Positive Thinking right here on mbradio.us.
Hey, before you go, make sure you check it out. Our limited edition Die Tired shirts are in the MBR shop for $25. Don't miss out.
the station where our veterans' voices are heard, MBR Talk.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Well, that was a short clip, but there is a long one out there. I don't know where it is, but there is one. There's a long one. Maybe H-Train can play it in the next one just to talk a little bit about Die Tard and what it's about. That was just a teaser. Everybody likes teasers. Okay, so let's get busy, folks. Let's dig down and deep here. So, key elements of commonly included in the definition: compulsion. It's a strong, often unforgettable urge to use or do something. Compulsion. So that's part of it. Loss of control is the second part. It's difficulty stopping or moderating the behavior of the action. Loss of control. And then we have continued use despite harm. Physical, emotional, social, or spiritual consequences then are going to happen. Cravings, intense desires, or preoccupations, okay? Those are those cravings. Tolerance and withdrawal, often present with substance abuse. You can see the anger starting to manifest. Addictions can also, that's my friend H-Train. H-Train got sick. You can hear him coughing. So, H-Train got sick over the holidays. His holidays was not very good. So if you hear him huffing and puffing over there, that is my boy H. So God rest him, send him healing. That whole family, his dad, him, and Cassie, they found some little bug to play with during Christmas, and that whole family got sick. God rest their soul. They haven't been around for about a week, and we're just over here hoping and praying for them at the moment. So the next thing we are going to do, so we're going to go back to addictions. Addiction can involve substances, alcohol, drugs, medications, behaviors such as gambling, food, sex, work, and of course now the internet or social media uses. It's a lot. There's a lot that we have to ascertain as humans, and physical balance along with our metaphysical balance, and when they come together, it bridges and it heals. From a broader perspective, addiction is not a moral failure. I want to put that in highlights. I want to put it in my comments. In fact, let me type that crap right now. I want you to know, in a broader perspective, addiction is not, and I'm going to put in big N-O-T, not a moral failure. So whoever tries to tell you that addiction is a failure, it is a bio-psycho-social spiritual imbalance. You tell them MJ said that. It is a bio-psycho-social spiritual imbalance that can be treated and healed with appropriate support, awareness, and integration. Now, I want that awareness word. You know me. I love the word awareness. So once we become aware, then we're like, oh my gosh, where have I been? That light bulb comes on. Until that light bulb comes on, your friends and family can have as many interventions as they want. And sometimes the light bulb can come on. It's very plausible. But most of the time, the individual who is in the addiction is going to get angry. They're going to get frustrated. They're going to feel attacked. They're going to feel cornered, right? Just like, you know, it's an army against one person and you try to trap a stray cat. You ever try to get a stray cat? Oh my God, you'll have scratches all the way up your arse and you'll have bite marks. Same as anything that's wild. And so I look at addictions like being wild, right? I'm wild. Why? Because it's an untamed, it's unbalanced and untamed and unaligned, not failure. It is bringing back into balance that we have to, and we need to find the right ideology and the right person to bring that back in. But it's not a failure. So whoever's telling you that, I want that out of your mind one time, because I don't believe in it, and you shouldn't either. So okay, there's the question. Here it is. What does biopsychosocial spiritual imbalance mean? that addiction for any chronic struggle is not caused by a single factor, but it is a disruption across 4 interconnected levels of human experience. These are the 4. Changes in brain chemistry and biological, right? That's the first one, biological. And it means that changes in the brain chemistry and reward pathways. It's also a genetic vulnerability, nervous system deregulation, and physical dependence and tolerance or withdrawal. That's number 1, biological. When the biology is out of balance, the body seeks relief or regulating through substances and behaviors. That's how it works. So now we have to go to the psychological, right? This refers, so the mind and emotions, right? So our psychological aspect is mind and emotions, trauma, stress, grief, and unresolved pain. This is where a lot of our military fall into this, the trauma, the stress, the grief, and the unresolved pain. That is the main component of a PTSD. Then we go to anxiety, depression, and shame. Coping patterns learned early in life. See, remember I know we had this PTSD. I can't remember what episode it was. And I go, most of the time with PTSD that I found working in Miami with PTSDers was it's a stack. Things are being stacked. People go into the military running from their childhood or their family. A lot of people who go into the military haven't been able to find their identity quick. So a high majority percentage will run to the military because they don't have money to go to school. The family doesn't have money to go to school. They are abused, or they come from a family full of substance, right, to begin with, and they need to break their chains. So there's a lot of trauma, a lot of depression, and a lot of psychological influencings in this media to ascertain that person to, at the end, have these addictions, right? So coping with patterns learned at the early age is one of the biggest ones. And then having such a belief system as I'm not good enough, or I can't feel without this. So if there was a child who had a parent who constantly downgraded them and saying, that's not it, that's not how you do it, way to go, you lost it for the team. These words are not encouraging to a child. They're very downplaying. They're very depressive words. So think about, as a child, where is our mind sought, right? Our mind is, we were not good enough. And that I don't even know how you could do that, or bringing home your report card and having a learning disorder, but yet your parents abused and beat you for having a learning disorder. It's a trigger. All of these can trigger in that psychological mind. The behavior becomes a strategy to managing that like internal distress, right? That's what it does. Okay, now we're going to go to social. This is number 3. This refers to relationships and our environment, social, right? Our social realm outside, family dynamics and attachment wounds, right? What does that mean, MJ? Family dynamics. Well, we just discussed some of them, even in the psychological. This is where the parent would put the child down in front of public. This is social, and making the child feel worthless, or making the child feel not good enough, right? Or, well, guess what little Johnny did today, and constantly rendering the ramifications of the child, of its learning practices to grow into an adult. The adult of the child, the parent or the guardian of the child, downplays them, pushes them into shame or guilt, and that's not good. Cultural normalization of addictive behaviors. So if you grew up in an environment, I'm just going to take the Rasta, right? If you're growing up in a Rasta family, marijuana is your friend, right? Because that is the Rasta. So we have to isolate what then, it can go even further to Christianity. And some of the people claiming that, why are you giving wine and not grape juice or water? We can even take it down that road. And now we have the addiction of the alcohol, right? And now they want to blame Christianity of the blood and the bread and blood of Christ, the body and blood of Christ, on the wine. So cultural normalizations can be huge with addictive behaviors. Isolation, lack of support, or belonging. If you were an outsider, an outcast, if you didn't have, the people were in a clique and they're bullying you, right? Growing up, we had bandies, right? We had the cheerleading group. Then we had the nerd group, or the very intelligent group that the bullies would call the nerds, right? And then we would have the jocks, and then we would have, the lady jocks. These were all cliques and groups. And that became so emotional bearing on children in school that this complicated their adult life. Because that socializing, that isolation, and that lack of support, that did not help growing up. These are all ramifications of why addictions feed from these unhealed areas. Social stressors, social stressors, right? This is another one. So at work, finances or loss, your social structure, where are you, right? All of these maintain. How many people do you know out there with social structure issues, having to be poor as a joke, but wanting the world just to keep up with the Joneses, because they haven't learned to love themselves and honor what they have within. So that's another very important side, that social side. Humans regulate through connection. I mean, we weren't here to be alone. We're not. We were here to form connections and network. It's like that Chinese red string coming out of us, right? That's what we were here. When connection is fractured, when one of those strings break, substitutes are often sought, depending on how that broke. How many people know that that is very much socialism of having a divorce? Okay, somebody going through a divorce, and one person just decides to leave the relationship and the other person is devastated. What the hell happened? No talk, no nothing, just flat out went your own way, whether it be with another person involved, a three-way, whatever. That is a human regulatory problem. That's social. And then we go into spiritual. Okay, so now we're at spiritual. Our spiritual, this refers to meaning, purpose, and the connection beyond the self, like outside of self. It disconnects from the purpose or our inner truth. Life purpose, soul purpose. If you remember freaking episode 1, are you here with a life purpose or a soul purpose? That is spirituality. What is the purpose? The purpose is not for you to have an addiction to numb yourself. The purpose of your inner truth of your life is what? You have to answer that. The loss of meaning, hope, or direction. You have completely lost this in addictions. You've lost faith. You've lost that very first mind power portal called faith. And we have to regain this back, because that is not ever a good thing either. Okay. Feeling separate from God, source, or life itself. That is your root chakra. That is the root to say, I am allowed to be. We've completely lost it. There is no more of that. And then a longing for wholesome peace, unity, and love. Addiction often reflects a misdirected research for relief, transcendence, and or belonging. So in essence, a biophysical, social, spiritual imbalance means the person is not broken. The system is out of alignment. I'm going to hashtag that. That's a beautiful one, right? The purpose, the person is not broke. The system is out of alignment. That is so beautiful, so beautiful. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one. Healing involves restoring balance across all 4 of those domains, not just stopping at the behavior. You have to complete all 4. When you have all 4, you are returning back into self-love, God love, and unconditional love. These are balances that even if we don't have an addiction, every single one of us needs to think about, whether you find it's an addiction or not, because some of these can fold across that psychological mind power plane that we think in order to find where we might need more of alignment or balance with an opposing thought that might be a little bit more negative. So healing involves restoring all these balances across all 4 of those domains, not just stopping at the behavior. So I want to take a little bit of a break. And then when we come back, I want to talk to you about all the myths that are involved. So I'm going to let Joel take us to our first break. And then when we come back, we're going to get into some of the myths about addictions. And I'll tell you why they're either true or not true. You're listening to mbradio.us. My name is MJ. I'm here on the world of conscious positive thinking. Be right back. No, we're not going to be right back. Okay. Let me find the Die Tired little thing because he's so cute. I'm going to find it and then we'll play the Die Tired music because Die Tired is who we are representing today. So here we go.
Hold on, things are dizzy, spinning rapidly. To miss another beat is such a tragedy. Now this moment feels like all eternity. It should feel so comfortable. It's all in the secrets of the open heart club. Tear it down, there is no need to scream and shout. When everything seems crazy, reflection now. A peace of mind should not include deception's help. It should feel so comfortable. All eyes stare into the scene, leaving bad taste in our memories. How can we all find change? It's all in the secrets of the open hearts. Honestly
All right. Welcome back. Thank you so much, Died Tired. Again, up in that corner, look at the duck. Go ahead with your QR codes. Take a picture of that. Help support our Veteran Voice Rising at MBR in connection with Died Tired. Let's get them on a platform that everybody can enjoy their music. So we're doing myths. Myths about addiction. Here we go. There are some common myths about addiction with clear truths that are useful for teaching, counseling, and being able to open discussions. So here we go. Number one myth is addiction is a moral failure or lack of willpower. The truth really is addiction is a chronic treatable condition involving brain chemistry, trauma, learned coping patterns, and environmental influences. Willpower alone is rarely sufficient. Willpower doesn't help. However, I am going to tell you, not a but, it's a however. I want to say willpower, your will center, it is a mind power portal, the will. When we have faith, which is first and foremost, the will comes in line, okay? And when we have that will that nobody is allowed to take away from us, then it's a game changer. So even though addiction is a moral failure of lack of willpower, is what they say, willpower alone is not enough sometimes. It is the help and it's the caring of that illness that we need to support and raise. Myth number 2. People choose to be addicts. The real truth is initial use may be a choice, a social behavior, but addiction is not. Once the brain and the nervous system's change occurs, choice becomes constraint. It just, I'm just going to leave it at that. That choice really just becomes constrained. So people choose to be addicts. The truth is the initial use is not there. However, the numbing and the joy that they feel, that is when the addiction starts to happen. Okay. Myth 3, only weak or irresponsible people become addicts. I know some alcoholics, and alcoholics are addicts. Every day they will drink a 6-pack of beer and get up and go to work. They are called functioning alcoholics. So people choose to be an addict? No. Only the weak or irresponsible people become addicts? The truth is addiction affects people across all intelligence, intellectual levels, professionals, faiths, and socioeconomic backgrounds. It affects everybody. When stress gets too much, this is when addiction starts. It is to numb the stress or the pain. Okay, so that is myth number 3. Myth number 4, addiction only involves drugs or alcohol. The truth of the matter is addictions can involve behaviors such as gambling, food, buying, somebody who's a constant, just they have to go spend money like a hoarder, hoarding, sex, work, technology, anything that repeatedly overrides the century of our well-being is an addiction. Does not have to be drugs or alcohol. So, myth number 5. Someone must hit rock bottom to recover. How many times have you heard that? They're going to hit rock bottom sooner or later. There's nowhere else besides up. The truth is, waiting for the collapse increases the harm of the psyche, the physical, and the sociological. That's the truth. It hurts. Early intervention and compassionate support lead to better outcomes. Now, I am not, I'm not going to sit here and tell any single one of you that intervention works. Again, it takes the will of the person. If you want to intervene, then open up their faith first and give them support of themselves as well. And we can have a better chance of actually increasing. Hey, Jackie, all kinds of addiction exist. Thank you for talking about this. You're very welcome. Exactly. And, Jackie, again, some of this, like I said in the beginning, people overlook at a very young age. A lot of addictions really start in our early childhood. And that is kind of oppressive. Right? It's like, it's very discerning. I'm going to say it's very discerning that the teachers, the parents can't understand the psyche of a child. I would love to see, how they always have the ladies who are pregnant and bearing the Lamaze class, the breathing classes, Lamaze class. Okay, so where is the education for these types of traumas of parents? Do you know that the first 5 years you mold that child? The molding of the child in conditioned mechanisms are exactly by man into the child. What the parent does, the child will do in early life and in older life. You are conditioned to that. So I think that instead of just having a Lamaze class, they may consider understanding psychological and metaphysical logic, metaphysical of that logic, and understanding our faith and our willpower structures, and to encourage people. That's for whatever. Okay. So then, number 6, stopping the substance or behavior means recovery. How many people? I haven't had a cigarette in a month. I haven't had alcohol in a week. That's great. Keep going. That means that they're starting the process of recovering. Stopping a substance or stopping a behavioral or stopping a psychological is great because you're honoring. Now, where's the support to get you further? That's where it's at. Let's find out why we're trying to be numb. And that's when we can say, here we go, right? Here we go. And open up. Those emotions are deep. Those emotions are attached to many different center and vortexes within our body, and we need to rid them. Yes, it's emotional. Yes, it's painful. And yes, if you're in an old belief pattern that adults don't cry, especially men don't cry, they don't show emotions besides anger, then you need to stop that old belief pattern, because maybe it's plausible that that old pattern can keep you in that anguish and that pain. Yeah. So the truth is, abstinence alone does not address underlying imbalances. Healing requires emotional, relational, and often spiritual integration. So when you have your emotions checked, your relations checked, and your spiritual alignment checked, healing has a better chance in recovering of an addict. Give you something to believe in, right? The 12 steps into Jesus Christ and God. That's what he preaches. So that's the truth, not just stopping, but understanding why. If you can understand why, then you are balanced and aligned. It is not a failure, it's an awareness. Remember that. Number 7 myth. Relapse means failure. The truth is, a relapse is often part of the learning and healing process, signaling areas that still need support or regulation. This is the one where when people relapse, a lot of your family and friends give up. A lot of your acquaintances give up, right? That's why when we go to addiction meetings, you find your support. Who is your on-call support person? Not everybody in the world can be that. That is a very special task. It's very daunting. Most of the time, your support people are those who actually had to go through the process and have been now aligned from addiction and balanced for a little bit of a time, and they want to give back. I know several people who are like that. And they realize no matter what time of the day, no matter what time of the night, they're going to answer that phone because they 100% know how cruel that was and how upsetting it was to go through that process. So make sure your support person is a 24-hour person for you, or maybe you might have 2 or 3 and give that one support person a minute, right? Depends on how far down that rabbit hole the addiction is. And that's very plausible. So that is, that's just relapse means failure. It does not. It does not. It just means that we're not totally healed in that center, basically. Now we got to dig a little bit deeper, right? There's different levels, right? You have different, like, look at volume, right? You have 0 to 100 in volume. Where is your volume that you want, that you are comfortable with? Well, that's it. A relapse means we're not comfortable. We're going to come back in. It's just not a comfortable place to be. So we're going to relapse. Why? Because we haven't uncovered something in that deep, deep pattern of that center. That happens to relapses, or it is stacked in so many center vortexes within our mind power centers or our chakra centers that we have to dig further or deeper or move to the next one in order to clear it fully. So we're going to get into that. Addiction is lifelong. That's myth number 8. Addiction is lifelong and people never truly heal. The truth is, many people achieve long-term recovery, balance, and fulfillment. That is the truth. The brain is capable of change. It is the neuroplasticity of our brain that allows that change to happen. So when somebody says, can't teach an old dog new tricks, or people don't ever change, that's a myth. That is an egoic, judgmental myth, which people need to stop saying. Because I am not the same person that I was all the way up until my 28th year. I am not that same person. And people who knew me back then, right, and then they want to partake with me now, they're finding a very big disconnect because I'm not that person. So in you out there, I have a food addiction. I love food. I'm a foodie. It's an addiction of mine. It really is. And I can gain weight when I am not moving and I'm in a wheelchair. I can gain weight just like that, just that quickly. 2025 was that addiction, right? Every time you turn around, I was sick. I was broken. I was out of remission. My dog died. 2025 had so many awarenesses of life lessons for my food addiction. My food addiction that causes my health not to be good. When my health gets checked and my body becomes imbalanced, I no longer have that addiction. So it is a myth and it's false that people never change. That's not true. We all do. We all have a recovery period. We all have stability, but we all have our life lessons to learn. So it's not a failure. It's not, I can't. It is something that I have to go really, really deep. What was food? Was food a scarcity source? Was food poisoned in my pot? Where was food such a problem in my life? That this is what I have to figure out. And now I have not only this life, I got to find it in the metaphysical side as well. Why food? Okay. Enough of that one and my neuroplasticity. So myth number 9. Here we go. Myth number 9. Treatment works the same for everyone. Sadly, effective healing is individualized. It is really on the person, how they feel best to heal or the comfort level of them healing. It may include medical care, therapies, community support, spiritual practices. I know that they were given methadone to addicts. And they were doing this they felt our government, and I was in Florida, and I know one of the people who would go down and wake up and go talk to a counselor. They would get their methadone, and then they would be good for however many days that they could go back. So the source of having no money in order to have the addiction, in order not to have a suicidal rate or any downfall or any ugly surrendering, they try to portion that being, right? And allowing this and this. Yes, then they get addicted to the day, but it's okay. It's not every day. It's not 10 times in a day. That's okay. And they get further and they get further and they get further apart. That was a program trying to minimize. That's like my food intake. I don't sacrifice my food. If I want it, I am really happy now of taking a bite of whatever it is and then not eating it. Just to say, see, I could do it. It's the way you wrap your mind around whatever it is that you're doing and then minimizing it till it's completely gone. So in Vegas, I lived in Vegas. You know, people go, oh, you want to go to the casino? I'm like, I'm over it. Living 2.5 years in Vegas, I was a little over gambling. Gambling became an addiction, right? Think about it. How much money as an airman did you really have, right? So you wanted to make more money. Then that became with learning lessons and failures, right? It was an addiction. It was, I had to go. I had to figure out, because once you win, now you become an addict and you fall into the prey. And not only do you fall into the prey as being an addict of gambling, well, what do casinos do? Here comes the food. Here comes the liquor, all free. You're winning. MJ's winning it. I'm winning. Here's my food. And I get a little drinky drink and I'm playing. And it all just boiled down into MJ not having money for 2 weeks or food for 2 weeks. And I had to get my ass back to the base and find food at the cafeteria. Yeah. Anything that derives an uncomfortableness of the physical is an addiction. It really is. Biting your nails. That's an addiction. That is people go, oh, it's a habit. No, it's an addiction. It's not a habit. It's a habit formed by an addiction, right? Of chewing, that oral fixation. Food is about an oral fixation in the mouth, right? What did was our pacifier removed too soon for that oral fixation? Did we not have enough of the bottle time moving right into food and not having that oral fixation time of it? Plausible. All is plausible. But these are how this addiction works. And these are why these myths come up. So again, we're back to the treatment works for everybody. It doesn't. What might work for me might not work for somebody else. When I started my spiritual practices, I started in a religion based. It was Catholicism. I talk about this all the time, but I felt like there was more. So then when religion, we went to spirituality and spirituality into consciousness, right? These are stepping stones of owning your failures, owning your life, not failures. I don't want to say it like that. Cancel, clear, delete. Owning your lessons that had to be learned in order for you to become in balance. When we become balanced, then the imbalance is a dysfunction to cause a disalignment or an addiction to numb whatever that may be, to hide the pain or to hide the stress, to do something. Okay. We're down to our last myth. It is addiction is about pleasure. So I believe at first, this is my belief system for me, it is a form of pleasure. Okay. For my addiction of food, it is pleasure. It is like, they always say the comfort foods, right? How many women, comfort foods, you know, the husbands are so programmed, right? The comfort foods. So when we're pregnant or we're menstruating, the husbands come in with ice cream. Here, honey, eat some ice cream. Make you feel better, right? So there's no blame saying, oh, well, you know, you pushing me to that caused me to have this. No. It is an isolation of one to another. Oh, she's menstruating. Get her some ice cream. Get her some comfort foods. Yeah, those comfort foods, they numb us all right. They numb us right back into being that addictive person. So for your friends and family out there who think that, you know, passing food instead of a Motrin is going to help? Are we creating an addict of the medications? Are we creating the addict of the food? You understand? So we have to go back into our child mind. What was we given? Were we given food as a way of comfort? Or were we giving medication as a food of comfort? Where did it stem from? Instead of healing what is wrong with the physiological, the mental, or the physical, right? The sociologicals. So I'm laughing because when you heal these things, you're like, yeah, I get it. I get it now. And then you can smile, because smiling tricks the ego. You're not hungry. You don't need that piece of cake. You put that shit down. But the scarcity of the food at some point has to be found in order to have that. Anyway, okay. Here's another really good phrase. Addiction is not the problem. It is the symptom of the unmet needs and unresolved pain. That's so the core of addiction. It is not the problem in itself. It is the symptom of unmet needs and unresolved pain. But I'll probably hashtag that. So that, we're going to take a little break. I need a little drink of water. I'm going to hashtag that. Jewel, are you still there, Jewel? Can we, are you still there, my friend? Okay. So we're going to go to break, and then we come back, and then we're going to find out about genetics and how it influences us. Going to go on a little break here.
Stand up for the red, white, and blue. Stand up for the values we hold true. With gratitude I'll stand as our flag begins to wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Stand up, put your hand on your heart. Stand up for the freedom it imparts. Bless all who stand for justice. Bless all who stand for peace. In the home of the brave and the land of the
Senior Airman Holland Pickard.
Specialist 4th Class Robert Summey, U.S. Army. Staff Sergeant Jerry Altman, United States Air Force.
Second Lieutenant Zachary Stead, Air Force.
All right, we're back. That was Sweet Potato Pie with Stand Up. Those Southern Belle ladies, they're so beautiful. I love that song. And yeah, I hope they allow military broadcasts to play that song forever and a day, because it truly is just an honoring of those who have fallen. Okay. In case you're just checking in, especially those on TikTok, this is Military Broadcast Radio. My name is MJ. We're here with the World of Conscious Positive Thinking on the station of MBR, and we are today discussing addictions. And addictions can play a very important, integral part of our well-being, and it can be more than just drugs and alcohol. It can get into the physicals of work or gambling or social medias or sex. It has a lot of different outtakes. So where we are now is we discovered the 4 major parts of the addiction. We've discussed the myths. And there's one other myth, or is it the truth? And that comes to genetics. What genetic influences? So, yeah, there is real well-established truth that genetics do play a role in the situation of an addiction or an addict. But genetics are not destiny. Your genetics, your makeup, so stop blaming your parents or your grandparents or your aunts and uncles for their drinking. If they started you drinking, stop it. Because all you're doing is allowing your ego and your judgment to push blame. Because it can't be your fault. God forbid, it can't be my fault. It can't be yours. No, somebody had to teach it. No. So stop that. Research shows that 40 to 60% of a person's vulnerability to addiction can be influenced by genetics. That's a high one, 40 to 60%. These inherited factors can affect how the brain processes dopamine and reward. Sensitivity to substance, the stronger reward or weaker negative effects. Stress response and nervous system regulations. These all are genetic beings of these inherited factors, how they're affecting. I just want to isolate why we're doing this. Stress response and nervous system regulation, impulsivity and or risk-taking traits, and how quickly tolerance or dependence develops. So these are all inherited factors why genetics play a big part. The millennials, my Gen Zers and my millennials, this is a hard one for them. This is a lot of the issues with this genetic, because they're not very independent. They have become, whether through financial issues or whatever, they haven't grown outside of themselves to step away from that family tree to produce their own trees. It's taking them a longer time to develop and grow these roots. They could possibly blame it on the alcohol. They could possibly blame it on the dope. They could possibly blame it on hereditary. But there is complete and utter substance that can play a part, an integral part of these beliefs of genetics. Okay. This means some people are biologically more susceptible once exposed. So if they get exposed to those traits, immediately genetics can snap in. Understand? Okay. What genetics do not do. Genetics do not guarantee an addiction. They do not override free will or awareness. And they do not act independently of environment, trauma, or choices. Genes require activation through experience. What does that mean? So if I have a family, my parents were not. I can speak of knowledge of other families. Let me put it that way. I do have knowledge just because I'm a healing center and I do have that their families have a long history of alcoholism. Okay, so alcoholism had been very, very important in the realm of our military. It became a very important at prohibition for those people who had scarcity of it and then turned into it. And now they lead that family. Now there's a difference. You know, I say I didn't have any alcohol. My family still consists of, my husband's from Trinidad. You don't find so many in the United States. Just because they drink alcohol on a daily basis doesn't mean that they're alcoholics. Right? MJ, I know. When we were raising our kids, my husband and I reward him for this, knowing that he had parents who drank and a history of drinking, and some of which who couldn't let it go. My husband said at the time, listen, in the islands, you don't drink the water. So you're either going to drink Coke or you're going to drink alcohol. Most of the times, the addiction is to more sodas filled due to having to boil water or so on and so forth. And they said once a kid could try to see it, they're like, here, you want to try it? And most of the time I didn't like it. However, as an adult, that was the leading beverage, right? Look at Carnival, look at their social. So alcohol became a staple, especially beers, right? It became a staple of their diet. It's a difference. There's a difference between numbing an everyday thing and not numbing. So hereditary, if there's no stressors and there's no unsusceptibilities or exposures to those biologicals, my kids didn't turn that up that way. In fact, my kids hardly drink. They'll have a social drink, but they don't really drink. You know, they're not have to come home every day and drink alcohol. They're not like that. And that's different. That's the difference between a psychological brain of understanding alcohol versus a brain who was told negatively about alcohol. Of course, when your grass is greener on the other side, right? Ask me. I was 18, right? I was 16. I was in those. And everybody here listening was in that parody. You know, you didn't want to be shunned. You didn't want to be the kid out. So you had to go to the party and you had to experience this. Did you teach your children like I taught mine? Knowing there's alcohol from my family's islands, what do I tell them? You can't drive. You're right. I don't want you driving. I will ask no questions. Just call me. I don't want to ask you questions. I will freely. I also taught them how to drink in party socializations, not to feel peer pressure. Get a beer in a can, not a bottle. Go dump it in the bathroom. Put water in it. Get a rum and Coke when people aren't looking. Pour half out. Pour more Coke in. Make sure they see you. Pour that little bit of rum. These are social peers as children. So if you have children, maybe you can help give them some clues of how to adjust at parties and be forceful in saying, I am not against it. This is against the law. There's law and order. You're not to drink. This is the law. If you get caught, don't call me. I'm not going to, because that is your will to do that. However, these are ways around it. And I proved that the way I did it for myself, right? If it works, that's great. If it doesn't, you know, then there's a life lesson to be learned. And then we have to honor that life lesson and we have to build on it. So genetics, what genetics do not do. Genetics do not guarantee addiction. They do not override free will or awareness, and they do not act independently in our environment, our trauma, and our choices. Genes require activation through experience. So gene-environment interaction, addiction emerges most often when genetic vulnerability meets, here's 4 of them: early trauma or chronic stress, emotional neglect or attachment disruption, substance availability or cultural normalization, and a lack of coping skills or safe regulation. So gene environment interaction, those 4 there are gonna meet what happens when it gets back into the gene environment. Okay. Some with genetic risk, but a supportive, regulated environment may never develop the addiction. I just got done telling you, my children were born in a substance of the island drinking, right? That was my ex-husband. They had that. However, to normalize it, not to surrender, every day, I don't know today, but my ex-husband would have either a Carib or a rum and Coke, and he would be cooking dinner. What is wrong with that? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. However, it accepts the genetics that drinking on a daily basis is good. However, with the support of the kids and the support knowing that this is not, this is just water. If you want water, you want juice, you want Kool-Aid, whatever you want, you take your drink. You're not in the islands anymore. There is water available that is not going to harm you. So these aspects, this is why these are important, right? So with someone who has these genetic risk, however, is supportive and it regulates the environment, that may never develop that addiction ever again. Someone with low genetic risk, however, severe trauma still can bring them to, that gene type for that addiction. Yes, very, very plausible. I told you 40 to 60% believe it. That's a big number. When I get a statistic like that, it's 40 to 60%. That's a big gap. Research shows that 40 to 60, what research is that? Who's doing that research, right? That's a big range of numbers. That's 20%. Anyway, what addiction, these gene types, it goes into epigenetics. And this is really an important distinction. So the epigenetics, it's life experiences that can turn genes on or off. That is epigenetics. EPIGENETICS. Please, anybody on here who has addiction, look this up, because life experiences can turn genes on and off. Trauma, stress, substance exposure can activate these risk genes. Healing practices, therapy, mindfulness, spiritual work, and self-relations can downplay or downregulate those same genes. They can just bring them right down. This is why recovery is so possible. Biology is adaptable. I'm going to say it again. Recovery is possible because biology is adaptable. Why is biology adaptable? Okay. For anybody who doesn't believe that to be the truth, let's go back. Where do we have the adaptability of our physiological, right? Recovery. Where is it? Well, we do recover. Biology is adaptable by our peers, our pressure. So knowing that we have a family who struggles on a daily, and I'm not talking the abuse, and you could, you could be. We could be talking that, where that the alcoholic parent becomes just abusive, right? Or if they have a lack of alcohol, they become mean. They become dysfunction. Or drugs, right? When they don't have their drugs, they go into the meanness. They go into the abuse side. And that is where it really hurts. So addictions end up in fields in our brain where that then becomes the tragedy of addiction. It becomes the abuse side, the unimportance of life or the unimportance of somebody else's self-care. Okay. So now we know what it is. Now we know that there's practices out there, the 12-step, and there's retreat centers, there's Al-Anons, and there's a whole bunch of other psychological treatments. But I really want to minimize these treatments because we know about them, and I want to go to something else. I want to go to the spiritual, holistical perspectives of addiction, because I have a good feeling for some, this can twist an outcome without having to be in a circle or having to go into a retreat centers. Sometimes a more softer, practical, opening up those centers that we seem to keep closed like skeletons in our closet. Sometimes these release to a phenomena of not having to have that drink. I had a gentleman who there is nothing else he could do within his family, his relationship at home, and blah, blah, blah. He just turned to drinking. He wanted to be numb. He didn't really want a divorce because he didn't want the family. He didn't want the kids. So he picked up drinking, right? There's the numbing substance. He picks up drinking to numb it. However, things start falling apart. So anybody who has alcohol or drugs or any addiction understands things will eventually fall apart. You might feel numb and good, right? For those 6 hours that you have to spend with your family outside of work and school. However, what's happening? We're not fixing the problem. We're stacking now problems. We're stacking more. And that just doesn't do us very well. Well, it doesn't do us very well at all. So our spiritual holistical perspective of this from a biopsychosocial spiritual lens. Here we go. Genetics load the gun. Our environment pulls the trigger. And awareness and healing put the safety back on. Look at that. Hello, military members. Genetics load your gun. The environment pulls that trigger. And awareness and healing puts the safety lock back on. We have to be aware. Look at that word again. We have to be aware and heal it in order to put our safety back on. Okay? Addiction often reflects an inherited nervous system pattern that not inherited failure. So it reflects an inherited nervous system pattern, not inherited failure. Got it? It's a pattern. And what do we say about patterns here on the world of conscious positive thinking? Patterns are no good. If I have to say, here we go again. Why me again? This always happens to me. This is a pattern. Patterns are no good. Clear them out, and then we don't have to face it again, and we don't have to go back in that rabbit hole and face it. Patterns are no good. Own it. Just own it. That's all you got to do. You have to just own it and figure out how to get rid of that pattern. Go see a metaphysical counselor. Go see a spiritual counselor. Go see a holistical counselor. Come away from the psychological counselors if you are constantly rehealing or relapsing or not getting through. Take an alternative. There's nothing wrong with it. You may learn more from an alternative person who has an extended soul life than somebody who studied for 4 years and trying to help you fix a problem that they have never fixed themselves. Does that make sense? Okay. So, genetics influence vulnerability, not inevitability. Addiction is shaped by biology interacting with life experiences. And healing can reshape all of this. It can reshape it. We can find that key takeaway of finding what is our vulnerability. What is it that we don't want to face? What is our inevitable addiction that is shaped by our biology interacting with life experience? Where does it come from? This is inner child work. This is dark. This is shadow work. In order to figure out what's triggering you to not blossom like a beautiful freaking lotus. You're still in the mud and in the stems. Why? What is the shame? Where's the guilt? Where's that skeleton? Remove it. There's nothing. There's no judgment. We need to get into that amygdala brain and go, there it is. Your ego, your super ego, and your judgment. They are tripping your receptors. Sometimes you can get away with helping somebody in their CBD receptors. People with food issues, GLP-1s, right? That's how they're getting away. It's taking that receptor of the brain to say, you are not hungry. That's the receptor. It is an inevitable process. We have to subsidize something else for it. My addiction is food. So I talk about these things, right? I talk about different mental practices. I talk about different meditations. You can do the same thing with alcohol, with gambling, with sex, with medications, with street drugs, with social media, right? If your brain is on that screen and social media and internet way too much, your receptors, especially if you're following something that is not balanced and it's far-sighted, these receptors, this is an addiction. You can't stand it. You constantly have to argue with that one person who completely is radical one side or the other, and you're constantly arguing. Why? Stop looking at it. It'll go away. Trust me. The more that you give something an attention is the more it's going to appear, especially with AI phones today. So stop giving it an attention and it'll go away. I promise you. Okay. We're good? Okay. We're going to go to the next part. Genetics versus trauma. Okay, this is big. This is big because remember, our genetics could have a very big issue, which is why we pushed ourselves into the military or pushed ourselves away from home or pushed ourselves to go as far away from our family as possible, because there was something that told us in that mind stream, I am not your child anymore. I got to go. Right? So genetics versus trauma, common myths and truths. Addiction is genetic, so nothing can be done. The truth is genetics influence vulnerability, not outcome. We talked about it. Genes express in response to environment, stress, and experiences. Healing can be change how your genes are expressed. It's epigenetics. To reframe the mind is genetics shape sensitivity. They do not determine the density. Okay. Myth 2. Is it a genetic trauma? Doesn't matter. The truth is trauma often activates genetic vulnerability. Without trauma or chronic stress, many genetic risks remain dormant. Truth. So reframe it. Genes load the blueprint. Trauma presses the activation button. Okay? See how we're reworking this? We're flipping it. These are all flipping of patterns. Myth number 3, addiction is caused only by trauma. Truth. Here we are. Trauma is a major risk factor. However, not everyone who experiences trauma develops addiction. Biological traits and nervous system sensitivity matter. We're going to reframe it. Here's the flip. Trauma explains why relief is sought. Biology explains how strongly it's reinforced. See how these myths are being interpreted, and now we're going to flip them. This is a good place. Yeah. Myth 5. If someone had a good childhood, addiction makes no sense. Truth. Trauma includes emotional neglect, chronic stress, perfection pressure, and medical trauma or identity suppression, not just obvious abuse. So let's reframe it. Trauma is about nervous system overwhelmingness, not event severity. That's the reframing. Okay. Myth number 5, you inherited addiction itself. I love when people go, they already are going to be an addict because there's a whole line of addicts in the family. So you're free willing that, or you're willing it to be on their will? No. Buck stops here. Cut the cords, right? Cord cutting. Buck stops here. Number 5, you inherited addiction itself. Truth. You inherited tendencies, stress, reactivity, and dopamine sensitivity. That's what you inherited, not substance or behavioral addiction. We're going to reframe it. We're going to twist it. Here's the twist. What's inherited is the nervous system pattern, not the coping strategy to heal it. There you go. This is the myth to the flip. So myth number 6, healing trauma alone cures addiction. The truth. Trauma healing is essential. However, recovery often also requires biological stabilization, skill building, community support and effort, and meaning making. So your life must have a purpose. If you don't have your first mind power center of faith and your root, I'm allowed to be, we are already disconnecting. Okay. So now we're going to reframe this. Trauma works open the door. Trauma work opens the door. Integration keeps it open. Okay. So, yep, you can see the trauma. Doesn't necessarily mean it's my genetics. Here comes the trauma. So trauma work opens that door. We're going to open up the door. We're going to see those skeletons, man. We're going to dive in deep. But integration keeps it open. Keep it open. Why? Because we got to keep healing. Whatever's going to come out, let's just pour it all out. If we open the door, then it's all going to come out. Sooner or later, it's going to come out. And sooner or later, we're going to be right here going, been waiting for you. Been waiting for you. Been waiting for you. Welcome. Now, can we let this go? Because this is so far in the past, I don't need it anymore. Be that person. Be that person. Yes, it's easier said than done. And I know that because I hear my other podcasters. MJ, it's easier said than done. I get it. I get it. But repetition destroys the ego. So if you'll hear me on the show with shoulds. Oh my God, not should, right? Or not, but however, or not, like you hear these words. I have to. No, I don't have to do anything. I get to. It's triggering the mind of positive thinking and having somebody there reminding you of the positiveness that you don't have to surrender to genetics. So somebody says, oh, it's genetics. Okay, so where is science? Oh, 40 to 60%. No. That's a big, come on. So basically, I told you, there's a lot of cliches. Yeah, there's a lot of cliches in owning this truth and how we can heal it. So trauma work opens up that door, but integration keeps it open for us. Myth number 7, relapse proves genetics won again. Blame game. Blame game, blame game, blame game. The truth is relapse reflects incomplete regulation and support gaps or unresolved stressors, right? Not genetic failures. So if you are in a relapse, that just means there's more trying to figure out what we are burying underneath our carpets, what skeletons lie in our closets. That is that. And we're going to reframe it by saying relapse is just information, not a verdict of guilt. Relapse is just information, not a verdict of guilt. Okay? Why? Because remember, I told you, on what volume do you want to hear the TV? Do you want to hear it so you drown out everything around you? Or do you want it in the background, just like the music here? We have music in the background. Sometimes music soothes the soul. Sometimes for others, it's very distracting. But this is where we're at. So here's a simple little comparison table. So the aspect is the role that you play. In genetics, it's vulnerability. But in trauma, it's activation. In the aspect of nature, right? Simple comparison. The aspect nature and genetics, inherited sensitivity, or in trauma, learned responses. Simple comparison table again. Changeability is the aspect. In our genetics, express is changeable. Expression is changeable. But in trauma, healing is possible. Get it? Determining the outcome. Genetics, no. Trauma, no. There is no way genetics or trauma will play an outcome of anything. That is your will. That is your faith and your will and your imagination center of understanding. These are all mind power centers that need to be involved. one of my therapies, when people get stuck, I get them on the table and I do something called a Reiki rewire. What I am doing is I am filling up their 12 mind power centers and 144 chakras to blend and tie and merge together. What does this do? This gives them a little amount of time to open up these doors or these windows and move these boulders out of the way in order for them to see a path going forward. Does not last, especially if you don't continue to work on yourself. I always tell people this isn't going to last. This is just assisting you to open up that pathway in the brain so that you can keep going forward. And yeah, you might get stuck, but it's allowing you to choose a destination of livability instead of vulnerability. That's what it's doing. Okay. Same type of thing. So the next we're going to do, let's see. I always ask, is it plausible to believe a family with addiction issues whose parents conditioned a child, newborn through 18, watching them drinking, smoking, partying, gambling, etc., fooding, will turn out to have addiction issues? This is going to go back into, is genetics playing a part? Or is it a conditioned value? Is it conditioned by you, the parent, or the grandparents, or the aunts and uncles? Remember, we just talked about this a little bit ago. So the answer is yeah. It is entirely plausible and strongly supported by research and clinical observation to believe that a child raised in a family where addictive behaviors are normalized has a significantly higher risk of developing addiction-related issues. The risk arises even without consciousness or the conscious intent by the parents. I remember when people in school, I remember we were going in a health class, and one of the things we were discussing was child abuse at the time, but they left it into an abuse of an over addiction of alcohol or whatever. And I remember, I don't want to say it was maybe 7th grade, 6th or 7th grade. They were asking us about alcoholism. It had to be 7th grade going into middle school, about alcohol. And to hear the people, what is alcohol? Well, it's a wine, it's a beer, it's a liquor, it's a this, that's alcohol. And when I was like, no, only on the holidays. It was a sign of good cheer. Like it was never, and I remember that. Now, a lot of people in my group weren't as fortunate. There were some who said, no, it's a 12-pack every day. It's a 12-pack of beer, or it's always, a half of a fifth, or it's always 2 bottles of wine. If you are somebody who is engaging in that, then I would suggest, why are you numbing yourself? Why do you feel that you have to numb yourself every day? And then you'll hear those people who say, I don't know, it doesn't affect me. Alcohol doesn't affect me like somebody else. I have a tolerance for it, but I like the way it tastes, or, blah, blah, blah. These are the people who are making excuses, because they could be drinking water. They could be drinking coffee. They could be drinking soda. They could be drinking juice. They could be drinking anything else, but they're choosing that because their body has a tolerance for it. I don't believe that to be the truth. I believe that is their ego or their super ego and their amygdala telling them, just say this. But it's not their truth. And when we get down really close to it, it really isn't their truth. There is something desperately going on. So why family conditions matter so deeply. Okay. Family. This is going to come back constantly. Why? Because your brain was impressioned as a child. They originally said from 0 to 5, and now they're even leaning more up into 7 years old. I'm just telling you, science, 40 to 60%, or 5 to 7, whatever. But it is a motion of the truth by study. So we have to go with it for now. Okay. For now, because it might help us now. So why family condition matters so deeply. Early brain and nervous system imprinting. We talked about this. From birth through adolescence, a child's brain is shaped by modeling and repetition. Children learn what regulation looks like by watching their caregivers, their teachers, their instructors, their athletic department, their parents, their grandparents, anything of an elder. Respect your elders, right? That's what you were told as a child. Respect your elders. Do as you are told, not as you want. Who was growing up in that atmosphere, right? Children learn what regulation looks like by watching the caregivers. Substances or compulsive behavior become associated with relief, celebration, bonding, or stress management. The nervous system learns this is how adults cope. So if they're coping by releasing, because you're like, why do you drink beer? I remember as a kid, right? One of my family members, not immediate, why do you always drink? I remember saying this. And his little voice came to me and said, because I am numb and free of any harm. I remember him saying that to me. And I'm like, just having to look at it going, it makes you feel good. But when you wake up, you're back in reality. So then it just starts a bad habit, right? The addiction, the habit. So in the morning, when you wake up grumpy, irritable, depressed, sad, anxious, unmotivated, and the only thing is the hair of the dog to beat you. So we go back and we start drinking again, or we start doing whatever again, because we haven't learned the balance. We haven't learned to fulfill that balance. Does that make sense? Okay. So this learning happens before critical thinking develops. So you can see the imprint that the family or its surrounding makes on the child as they grow. And this is where a lot of these people decide that they don't want no more, they're taken off, but yet that imprint's already there. So now when they get into their work or their studies or their unapproachable, undeemable, I can't deal with this anymore. Oh, that's right. I can just drink. It's just going to numb the pain. Or I can take this pill. It's going to numb the pain. Or I can start digging into food as comfort. See how that imprint moves? So then we go into behavioral modeling, which is social learning, the theory that children do not learn primarily through instruction. They learn through observation. What they see is what they do, right? So like social media, what you see on social media these days, you have to believe it's true because, you know, my good friend so-and-so would never post that if it wasn't true. Wrong. My parent, wrong. We all have a system of believing a truth when it happens at the moment because it makes us feel good. It balances us, or it is a, see, I told you so, right? This is the state of division. And it could be a very addicting, like social media is very addicting, because the best thing is having the divisions over the last 20 to 25 years in our world. These divisive divisionals, it's an addiction. How many people wake up and the first thing they damn do is they grab their phone? I'm guilty of it. I grab my phone to look to see what time it is. You know, oh, hello, welcome. What's today? What do we have? You know, so my phone, first thing is it comes up on weather. I open up my eyes, is the time, I click, and it shows me today's weather. It's an addiction. I want to know the time and I want to know the weather. And they go, MJ, that's not an addiction. Everything is an addiction, because then it leads into everything else. How many people wake up? They have to have a cup of coffee and they have to see their newspaper before they start their day. The addiction of those in the finance department. They open up their eyes and they're jumping to see what the stock market is doing. Who did what when they were asleep over on the other side of the world? It forms stressful addictions. So, by observation, drinking, smoking, gambling, partying are all perceived as normal adult behavior when we have behavior modeling. There's nothing wrong with it. Why? I can go out to that party. Well, there's nothing wrong with it. Well, my dad goes gambling. He goes to the casino. I'm just going to go to the casino. Well, betting. Oh my gosh. The sports, gambling. That is gambling. That's an addiction. Because if you got a taste of money, you're going to keep being hungry and hungry and hungry for it. So where's the addiction and why do we have it? Why do we keep putting on our money knowing we could lose big at any minute? Right? Dog tracks, horse tracks, high lie. I can name tons of gambling apparatuses. Race, the jockey tracks. Kentucky Derby. My God, the billions of dollars. These are forms of addiction. All of it. If you like it, that's your will. But I don't want to hear it if you are part of mine that you are in debt above your ass. Let's heal this. I don't want to keep hearing about it because you're losing. It just doesn't work. And they can say, oh, I'm a professional gambler. I only bet on good odds. I love that one. I'm like, everybody has free will. Everybody. I love when I hear that, though. I only bet on good odds. Shut up. That's what I have to say. Stop it. Stop it. I understand that, here's another thing. I really don't play lotto because I feel like I'm just wasting my money. Maybe it's because I was over the gambling in 2.5 years in Vegas. But for me to play lotto these days, I see other people winning and I see other people, but how much money I didn't win. It's like bingo. I love bingo. I play the odds in bingo, right? Okay. How many people are here? And I start doing the math. I Sheldon Cooper brain. Oh, there's 60 people here. And if I flood my computers and flood my floor and I play on the odd, I have a better chance of winning. That's a gambler's side. That's a gambler's thing. But I still like bingo. Still a gambling. So some part inside. Now I don't play bingo a lot. In fact, I haven't played bingo. I can't even tell you how long. But I saw a bingo hall the other day and I went, oh my God, there's a bingo hall. I didn't know how close it was to my house. And my husband just looks at me, goes, you play bingo? And I'm like, do I play bingo? I was the most hated bingo player in my family reunions. Uncle Harry, God love you. Right? But I do like to play bingo, whether it's for a prize, for money, or just for sport. I like bingo because bingo doesn't have to be about money. It could just be a win or lose. And, you're just eagerly finding the numbers. Keep your mind sharp. I'm not so sure they're gambling. Maybe somebody who is a very diehard addicted gambler can tell me, well, it's cards. It keeps it in your brain. They could probably find the same excuses I just did for bingo for gambling. I'm sure they could, but que sera, sera. Okay, boundaries around modernizations and consequences may be absent or inconsistent. Addictive behavior becomes normalized rather than questioned. Attachment and emotional regulation. In homes where addiction is present, emotional availability may be inconsistent. Children may learn to self-soothe prematurely, right? The person who's too busy watching TV, smoking and drinking and has a child, they just want the child to go to bed at 7 o'clock and leave them the hell alone. That's a problem because now the childs are learning to have to self-soothe prematurely instead of over that period of time. I don't believe in it. So maybe you do. I don't believe in having children self-soothe themselves, right? There is to a degree, not because I'm exhausted and it's my time and that is their time. It's a hard one. I'm not here to judge it, but I do personally not agree with it because then it comes to the attachment emotional regulating into a behavior mechanism of addiction, self-soothing, that child to learn that at a premature cycle. Stress, chaos, and unpredictability trains hyper vigilance and emotional numbing. Addiction later becomes a regulation strategy, not a rebellion. That's how it becomes. So number 4 in this series. Trauma does not require abuse. Even without overt abuse, chronic exposures to substance-focused environments, unpredictability, or emotional inconsistencies, and parentified rules or emotional neglect can create developmental trauma, which increases that addiction risk. Know what you're saying, know your tones, know your words, know what you're putting out there, because that trauma is regulated by somebody else's conjuncture of the emotions of the brain. Number 5 is the genetic and the epigenetic layering. Genetic vulnerability may already be present. We just don't know. Environmental exposure can activate those risk genes. Your stress hormones during development alter the brain wiring related to impulsive control and rewards. This is the nature and the nurture reinforcing each other. This is that balance, trying to nurture it, going back to the child left to soothe themselves. Important nuisance. This does not mean every child from such a family will develop addictions, that parents are intentionally harming their children, or addiction is inevitable or irreversible. Protective factors that are secure attachment with another adult, awareness, spiritual grounding, therapy, resilience traits can interrupt all of these cycles. So the balance of the truth of statement here is a child raised in an addiction normalized environment is not doomed. So don't say you're doomed. Don't say you did it. However, they are statistically and biologically more vulnerable than others unless corrective experience occurs. Cut the cord. Stop the BS. Cut the cord. This is a good phrase. Addiction isn't only inherited through genes. It's inherited through our nervous system behaviors and our beliefs. What is it that you believe in? So somebody asked, are all addictions from the same chakra center? Now we're going to get into chakras. And the short answer is no, all addictions do not come from that chakra center, but they often are clustered around a few core of those chakras, depending on what the addiction is regulating. From an energetic perspective, addiction, let me think. Okay. As an energetic perspective, I believe it's where life forces is blocked, overcompensating or seeking that relief. So our primary chakras. So you want to know where your addiction lies and you want to know what chakra you're having issues, get your pencil ready because here we go. We're going to go through them fast because I'm running out of time. Our root chakra, right? Our root chakra is safety and survival. Very common foundations, okay, that could interfere. Fear, insecurity, instability. Addiction as a way of feel grounded, safe, and soothed. Often present in generational addiction, poverty, stress, and early instability. Common expressions in your root chakra are alcohol, food, nicotine, hoarding, and workaholics. Your core wound, I am not safe. That's the wound that you have to heal. Okay, we're going to go to the sacral coming up. That is the pleasure and emotional centers. Extremely common, emotional suppression or overwhelming. Addiction that replaces healthy pleasures, intimacy, or creativity. Trauma, shame, or boundary violations live here. Common expression of addictions are sex, substances, shopping, and binge behaviors. Your core wound. It's not safe to feel. So your root was, I am not safe. Your sacral is, it's not safe to feel. Okay, going up. to our breadbasket, our solar plexus. That is our power and our identity. Often overlooked. It is control issues, shame, self-worth struggles. The addiction becomes a way to feel powerful, confident, and in control. Perfectionism and people-pleasing often coexist. So this common expression is gambling, stimulants, work addiction, and controlled behaviors. Your core wound is I am not enough. You don't feel that you are enough. In your heart chakra, this is the love and connection chakra. But if an addiction is present, it makes grief with loss, abandonment, betrayal, unresolved sorrow. Addiction fills a void of connection or numbs that heartbreak. They don't want to feel it. Your common expressions are relationship addictions, devoting your time to others, not focusing on the one that you love, cheating basically, substances tied to the bonding. So your core wound is, I am alone and I am unloved. If that's how you feel, this is where your addiction starts. We go to the upper chakras. It's less origin, but more impact. So you have your throat chakra, which is the addiction of silences truth. You're not allowed to talk the truth, and difficulty expressing needs or boundaries. Your third eye, it's right here. This is a skepticism and disassociation by fantasy. You're always daydreaming into a fantasy, not living in the real world. Confusion between intuition and avoidance. And then you have, of course, your crown is the top. It's your spiritual bypassing, seeking transcendence without grounding. You must get to the root first. Upper chakras are affected by addiction, rarely originates in any of these three, your throat, your third eye, or your crown. And if they do, it's all coming back because of your bottom hata or your root, okay? Addiction is not about excess pleasure. It is about blocked life force seeking regulation. Most addictions involve multiple chakra patterns. We just talked about them, but usually one primarily center holds the root of imbalance. So out of all of them, when you pinpoint it, then we have to engage. We got to go deep. You got to start getting guided meditations inside of there, asking yourself, what is the not enough or the too much, to stay centered and to understand that it is in the past, it is unhealed, and we just need to let that go. Okay. Most addictions involve the multiple chakras, but usually only that one primary. It'll stick out like a sore thumb. Practical, energetic takeaway here: treating addiction at only one chakra misses your whole system. Healing requires grounding. It's your root, feeling it in your sacral, empowering it in your solar plexus, and then reconnecting all of that learned process back into your heart chakra, so you can speak with love, you can forethought with love, and you can divinely accept it from God's grace. That is your throat, your third eye, and to God's heaven. So, alcohol. Here we're gonna break down some substances and then we'll finish. So addictions are mapped by chakra imbalance. Alcohol, primary is your root, your sacral, your heart. Your root is safety, grounding, survival, stress. Your sacral is emotional suppression or overflow, and your heart is grief, loneliness, and relational pain. Your energetic needs need to have safety, you need to honor your feelings, and you need to balance your connections. Nicotine or smoking addictions. This is your root and throat. You have a root and throat issue if we are nicotine smokers, okay? This is a root of anxiety and nervous system regulation. Your throat is unspoken truth, and you swallow your emotions. You have a lot to say, but for whatever guilt or shame or unresolved issues within yourself or within your family unit or your tribe, you refuse to talk about them. Energetics needed is grounding. You got to get grounded. You got to get that 217 to 412 in your body. Ground it and be expression. Write it if you don't want to speak it. Write it in a book. May it be your life journey of healing. Write it down. Food binging, eating. Primary chakras is root, sacral, and solar plexus. Woo! I'm in all three of those. Root is my comfort and my security. Sacral is unmet pleasures or nurturing. Solar plexus is shame, control, and self-worth. Energetic need is nourishment, but with self-trust. Honoring the body needs the nourishment, doesn't need an excessive amount of scarcity to have that nourishment. Sugars. Primary chakra is your sacral and your solar plexus. If you have addiction to sugars, this is your sacral is pleasure deprivation. There's your sacral, women. Here's your ice cream. Here's your brownie. Here's your cookies, right? The emotional pain of the sacral, right? Solar plexus. This is fatigue. This is self-esteem. This is depletion. So the energetic need is joy and vitality. You need to have joy, unstoppable joy and vitality. Know that you have a virtual, beautiful vitality of life. For sugar. Sex or pornography, those who are addicted to constantly watching pornographics or in sex or child pornography. Primary chakras are your sacral, your heart, and your throat. Your sacral is intimacy wounds, boundary of confusion. It doesn't need, your womb is both men and women. So don't just think this is women in sacral. Your heart, it's longing for love or validation that was not there as a child. It is that unconditional love that we need. Throat, an ability to communicate needs. Energetic needs, it's safety of intimacy. Maybe it's plausible that as a child, you didn't have it. So you were a product of somebody of inappropriately touching your sexual organs or having that intercourse at such a young age and being forced to have it for peer pressure or family pressure or whatever it may be. There is then that need of safety of intimacy. It's not just mechanical, right? Of an unforced will. So then there becomes emotional of honesty. When you're allowed to speak the truth of something that did not align in your sexual organs as a child or in a past life, then you speak your truth to release that mechanism. Addiction of drugs, right? Opioids or sedatives, right? These are primary chakras. This is your root, your sacral, and your third eye. Your root is really a deep safety wound. So when we use drugs to numb our pain, it's a complete and utter safety experience. This is most with the alcohol. This is where our vets have these deep root safety wounds that they have to unheal. Thinking that maybe running from a parental abuse into the military causing a significant abuse on that front line may be plausible why we feel the way we do. Sacral, and that is emotional pain. It's the emotion of not feeling loved. It's the unconditional love that we don't feel anymore. And that goes into that emotional pain. And then that third eye, it escapes from reality into sensation. So a lot of people daydream or they're forever going back into wherever it was in that trauma. They're constantly with that third eye escaping reality of today of safetiness. So those drugs play that to get them out of those images. So stimulants such as cocaine, meth, ADHD medications that are misused. The primary is your solar plex in your third eye. So your solar plex is power, it's confidence, it's productivity. Your third eye goes back into focus, clarity, and control. Your energetic needs is self-worth and presence. You have no self-worth by taking these stimulant of these drugs. You need to find the power within you. You are your power. You are your will, and you have that faith to control it. These are things for stimulants. Gambling primary is our solar plex and our root. Our solar plex is because we have our control, our identity, our ego wounds. And then our root is survival of fear, scarcity, mindset. That's in our root. Scarcity of money, thinking we gamble, we make it. And then what happens when we don't? That just leads us more into that hole. So our energetic needs here is an empowerment of stability, being stable and dwart so that we don't have these high peaks and low peaks, so that we have to go gamble or feel that we have to have that in order for us to be stable and grounded. Workaholics, Capricorns, Taurus, you people, you are major of these workaholic. They counter into our solar plexus and our heart. Why? Because you fall within the fields of that solar plex of worth tied to productivity. You're not worth anything if you don't produce something in life. That is a major characteristic in that energetic field. Okay. And your heart, your conditional love, your approval seeking, you seek for everybody's approval. And when you don't get it, it hammers on you. That's the energetic field of a workaholic. And that is an addiction in itself. So that energetic need is intrinsic value and rest. You need to rest the mind, need to rest the soul, right? We have to be able to vibe in those lower units as well as those higher units. Shopping and spending. If you are a shopaholic, an addiction to shopping and spending money, these are sacral, solar plex, and heart. Your sacral means it's an emotional reward. Your solar plexus is identity of building. And then your heart is its emptiness and loneliness. So buying fulfills that heart of, oh, I got my needs, I got my wants. I'm so happy, right? But why do you constantly need materialistic things? That's the trigger. So your energetic needs is, why aren't you feeling fulfilled? And where's your self-connection? It's not materialistic goods. Get it? Okay. Technology, social media, that's a big one for a lot of people. The third eye, the heart, and the throat are all related. The third eye is overstimulation, and it is a distraction. Your heart is validation of hunger, and your throat is identity, expression, confusion. So your energetical need is persistence and authentic connections. Authentic. We talked about how social media transforms into the belief that that's my mom or my aunt or my best friend. They would never post something so radical if it wasn't true. That's not true. It is the authentic connections. That is why technology and social media become this addiction. Exercising as an addiction. Primary is solar plex and root. If you are addicted to exercising, your solar plexus, your control and achievement, and then your root is fear of collapse or instability. What is it that you fear that you are excessively exercising this way? Energetic needs means balance and embodied safety. You're missing these two. So most addictions involve one primary chakra and two secondary compensations. This is that stacking. This is that layering that we talk about. How are we going to get to break this up? Right? Healing fails when only the behavior is addressed and the energetic need remains unmet. So that's where that healing fails. If we constantly go back into those energies, healing one energy at a time to associate with the second two compensaries will come to more of a balanced healing. So heal the chakra need and the addiction loses their job. So get it. Understand what chakra needs to heal. So we heal that chakra that's needed, and then the addiction then loses all of its fundamental properties or its job that it's supposed to be doing. And then we could say, adios, amigo, right? Bye-bye. Okay. By discussing the chakra-specific healing frameworks and its addictions and how to refocus the mind, each one of those, it's practical, it's embodied practices that can be used in everyday and recovery work. Spiritual counseling, retreats, and daily integration, the goal is to meet the energetic need so that the addiction can no longer be its role model in our consciousness. So when we have that, You know, if it's a root, start by grounding. Take off those damn shoes. Get out of the rubber. Get out of the concrete. Put your feet in dirt. Get grounded into earth. Slow breathing, consistent routines. Your sacral practices, oh my gosh, my nose, is emotional journaling. So in your sacral, it's your feeling. How are you feeling? Why am I feeling this numb? How am I feeling this numb? Why? Start writing in a journal. That's your sacral practice. Gentle hip opening up movements or water immersion. Sit yourself in water and do like the breaststroke, right? Where your arms look like a frog. Get in there, get moving, open up your sacral inhibitors, right? Open those up and start journaling how you're feeling. And then we go to the permission to feel without fixing it. That's your sacral. Your heart practices, grief, rituals, letters, candles, ceremonies. Open up those grief factors. Co-regulate with having safe human connection with somebody who's not judging you or not placing ego upon you. These are heart practices. Feeling that deep passion, loving, kindness, prayers, and meditation. Being love for self and love for God and love for man. Have to have that. And so when you look at those, like nicotine and smoking, we already talked about our root and our throat, the daily practices, saying one honest thing loudly. Say it. Don't be scared to tell your truth. Don't be shy to pull it back. Cold water on your feet and on your legs to get your root. Chewing, grounding herbs such as licorice, cinnamon sticks, something to connect you into earth, and slow walking. This will all get you out of nicotine and smoking. By the way, clove, C-O-V-E, clove. Yes, the kind you stick in a ham, the kind you cook with, the kind that's in apple pies. You can smoke it, you can eat it, you can light it. Clove helps addiction removal. Clove helps addiction removal. If you have addictions, that's how I stopped smoking, was using cloves. My foods, I add clove into my foods. I eat less. Clove. Okay, so your throat, and then you have your food and your binging, as we talked about, your root. Eat at consistent times. Don't not eat all day and then pig at the end of the day, right? That's not. Warm your foods and self-soothing. Eat 20 minutes. Take 20 minutes to eat half the food that's on your plate. Sacral, mindful pleasures, tasting without judgment. I'm not going to say I like it or I don't like it. It is just nourishment for every cell in my body. Solar plexus, self-trust affirmations. Stop eating the first sign that you see food. Ask yourself, are you hungry? Are you not hungry? Sugars, right? Sugars are a problem. Blood sugars, especially stability through that rhythm of blood sugars in your insulin or your GLP-1s. That is really crucial for your sacral and your solar plexus. Sex and pornography, pelvic floor relaxation practices. Look into Kundalini yogas. Look into pelvic floor issues. Roll your sacral on a ball, left, right, side to side. Your heart, inner child, or attaching things. Dig deep into those heart traumas of that inner child. Sometimes we don't even remember them until we're in a meditation, and then it all comes out, or we have to unlayer stuff in order for it to come out. So these are all, and I'm way over. I'm so sorry. So I'm gonna go down because this should have been cancel, clear, delete. I could have made this a 2-part series because there's just so much involved, and I may do that. So I might conclude, because having psychological and retreat centers, what they do is one thing, but getting into the metaphysical approach is another. So I may make episode 65. In fact, I'm going to, because there's so much I want to dig into, and I just don't have the time. I'm already over. And so I got to run. Next week, I'm going to do episode 65 on addictions and assisting in the metaphysical. So I love you all. Thank you for listening, and be back for part 2 of addictions through the metaphysical next week. Happy New Year, and may all of your wishes come forth in 2026. It is the year of the horse. So get up on that horse and plow and go as fast as you can to build your fruition and to your love and your peace, however you want. You're listening to Military Broadcast Radio. I am MJ here at the World of Conscious Positive Thinking. And right here on our beautiful MBR station, the veterans get to have a voice, and we get to heal by having that voice. So, folks, I love you. I'll be back in 2026 with part 2 of Addictions through the Metaphysical Practices.
Life is like a duck. Tough times don't last, but tough people do. Here at Military Broadcast Radio, we're teaming up with our friends at Die Tired, the veteran-friendly music band spreading strength, resilience, and mental health awareness one shirt at a time.
And check this out. Their brand new shirts feature broadcast beaker right on the breast pocket. A reminder that you can weather the storm, and you're never alone.
Shirts are only $25, and proceeds support giving veterans a voice. MBR's mission to teach veterans how to podcast and videocast. Because when our vets are talking, they're not overthinking. They're not second-guessing. Together, we stop the 22 stigma. Grab your shirt today at mbradio.us and hit the shop. Or go directly to toramerch.printavo.com/merch/dietiredband. That's toramerch.printavo.com/merch/dietiredband.
Suit up, stand strong.
Remember, we're unduckable together.
You're built tougher than the storm.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.